reports to the top of presentations, and also 8C, OHS new course offerings to be embedded under the principal reports. Mr. Rulin needs to attend the hockey game, so he has to leave at 6:30. So move those two things up for him. So I will make a motion to make those two movements of 6C and 8C to occur at the front of 6. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Then the other discussion, the question about the walkout. I don't know what the consensus of the board is. Meredith and I did talk about it, and I feel like the contingencies are well planned. I feel like this is one of those scenarios where we probably don't want to talk about every contingency in public, because at that point they lose their value as contingencies. So I consulted with our lawyer. I think there is a way that we could potentially do this in an executive session, so I'm not sure if the board wants to just trust the administration on this, have an executive session on this, or what's the board's pleasure on how to proceed with that?
I would prefer an executive session, nothing against the administrators at all. I just kind of like to know what the plan is.
Okay, so I would like to add under discussion items a B. So a friendly amendment to the motion to add a B, but it would be executive session discussion on that. Executive session under 1 MRSA 405-6F, public records. Okay, so the motion now has 3 changes, 6C and 8C to the front of 6, and to add a 7B executive session. Is there any other adjustments to the agenda? We had a second already, right, Jake? Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of the agenda adjustments? Okay. So we will move on to consideration of minutes. We have minutes for the Tuesday, February 6th meeting that were presented. I will make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any adjustments or corrections? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the minutes as presented? All right. Next up, we have acknowledgements. You want to start, Aaron?
I know there are tons of things to acknowledge. I don't want to steal them all, but I definitely know I'm going to hear this a few times. But congratulations to Show Choir Middle School and High School. You can say it again. Congratulations to the hockey team. And I know there were like a few other things that I was thinking, but go ahead and someone might catch them.
I'm all set, thank you.
Sometimes going first is an advantage, sometimes it's a disadvantage. But I will second the show choir. Both middle school and the high school were fantastic and scored extremely well. The qualification to go to state was to score an 80, and they were both in the 90s. And I'd also just like to recognize that I saw both principals, the middle school and high school principal, at the show choir events, and that was at Millinocket, an hour and a half away from here. So just in general, I acknowledge all 3 of our principals for their frequent late nights and evening attendance at events. I think a lot of people don't realize just how many times they do that, and it's appreciated. It's great to see them, and I appreciate that. Let's see, a hockey team. Yep, I think that's all I had.
I have a few to mention. We have some, I was just comparing with Mr. Rulin's report because I don't want to steal his thunder. Sorry, we have feedback. Not sure. So we have several students at Orono High School who have been recognized in their respective sports. Kellen Doyle was named just last week. I believe it was released that he was named as the co-swimmer of the year for PVC. And Sam Holt and Liza Gallant both qualified to represent the Maine Eastern High School students in the New England School Championship. So congratulations to those seniors who are definitely standouts in their respective sports. I also want to recognize Deb White, who has become our de facto PR guru, and she just asked if we would like her help to help share the good news of our school students community on our social media feeds that we started this year. And she's just doing a great job of putting that good news out there for everyone to see and celebrating the accomplishments and helping to highlight events. So I want to thank her for her efforts in that, because there is a lot of information to share, and she's doing a good job of putting that out there. And I can tell by the traffic on the Facebook feed, I'm not a Twitterer, but we do have a lot of people following that, a growing number. And I would also finally like to recognize all of the individuals, I'm not going to name them by name because I would miss someone, who helped make the community forum happen last week. It was really a true group effort, from the people who helped with the advertising, the food preparation, promotion, the logistics of setting up and facilitating the groups. I appreciate everyone's work on that, and I think it was a great evening.
I will echo everything that's been said so far, in particular the show choir, which unfortunately I've not been able to see yet, but hope to be able to do so soon. But everything I've heard was fabulous. And then also really the hard work of everyone for making that community supper and that facilities forum happen. I think it was a great event. We get a lot of valuable information. I heard a lot of positive feedback from those people who did attend, so that was great. A couple of other things to add. Those of you who looked at the op-ed and letters to the editor page of the Bangor Daily News today saw that Orono schools were well represented. Orono High School teacher Claire Moriarty was there, drawing attention to a event that she is collaborating on with the University of Maine. Very worthwhile event. And then the three of our high school students, Liza Gallant, Jesse Walker, and Katie O'Brien, had a letter to the editor regarding National Walkout Day, which I thought was very well written and eloquently presented. And then last but not least, I would like to acknowledge the Asa Adams Student Council under the very able direction of Deb White again for a pretty involved and seems like rapidly growing fundraising effort to benefit a local family. So the information is out there on that for anyone who wants to participate. It involves donating pairs of shoes, and there's some collaboration going on in the town. I'd like to acknowledge the town, Sophie Wilson, town manager, and Mitch Stone, Parks and Rec Director, for working on this as well. It's a great thing, so thank you.
I think everything, ooh, it works. Everything has been said, so I have no new acknowledgements.
Anything forgotten? Any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll move on to presentations, and we will start with the principals and with Reg.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, you did leave out one high school student. Eli McGill was selected last week as Student of the Year by the Foreign Language Association of Maine, and he'll be recognized this Friday. Storm allows some travel, but it's down at their annual conference in Portland. And what's really cool is this is the second consecutive year that an Orono High School student has been selected. So very excited about that and proud. And I know Chris Crocker and Jay Hubbard were super proud to make that news. So congratulations to Eli. And then I won't read through all the people have mentioned the various sports achievements, but one of the really nice things is everything from our girls basketball team making preliminary round, boys girls basketball quarterfinal, sportsmanship, swim team. We had a male coachman of the year. Nordic ski, girls won the state championship. We had Sam Holt as the individual gold medalist, and our hockey team is playing the Northern Maine championship tonight. And so, like, every team was represented really strong by the end of the season. So I just thought that was, pretty special for all those teams, as well as the show choir performance. So it's really been a great winter, athletically and performing arts. So I do want to recognize our students of the month academically. Our grade 9 student of the month is Trinity Glenn Cross of Orono. Grade 10 was Catherine Butens of Orono. Grade 11 is Leah Costello of Orono, and grade 12 is Drew Jameson of Easy. And our National Honor Society induction ceremony takes place next week. That got postponed from back in January, so it's finally here. Everyone's invited. That's at 6 o'clock in the library next Thursday. Sorry, cafeteria. Cafeteria. Sorry. Let's see, tomorrow night we're hoping we can pull off this 8th grade parent information night from 6:30 to 7:30. That is in the library. We do have a snow date planned for next Wednesday, the 14th. We'll make that final decision tomorrow, depending on the timing of the snow. So, we don't want any barriers to parents attending. We want a good turnout. We don't want people to decide, we're not going out, it's snowing. So, we'll make that call early tomorrow morning, or mid-morning. Our progress reports actually mailed home today for the third quarter. Our course sign-up process was very smoothly. We've got only 5 current students at the high school who haven't turned their course sign-up sheets in. They're being tracked down as I speak. And so we're really ahead of schedule as far as course sign-ups. But 8th grade sign-ups will be next year's 9th graders. We're in the process of collecting those sheets. So that is in good shape. Some of the efforts I want to highlight, our math department on Friday, were invited over to the College of Ed to give some feedback on their virtual reality, in their virtual reality lab, a couple of math programs that they're working on. There's a virtual reality geometry, I forget what the other one was. There's also developed a Teach Live kind of virtual reality practice program, basically for student teachers. Puts the teacher actually in the virtual classroom, and they really enjoyed that. Language teachers are going down to the annual conference this Friday, Thursday, Friday, hopefully. English department is going to the Maine Humanities Council winter weekend next weekend. And I wanted to highlight also on Friday at the in-service day, there's also been a lot of conversation about school safety in general, and certainly shootings, but we also wanted to focus on what are some of the things that we're unfortunately more likely to see, not unfortunately, but things like heart attack or seizure or choking, allergic reactions. So our trainer, JP Stowe, came in and gave a refresher course on all those, on how to use an AED device. And we really got great feedback at the end of the day from teachers. They appreciated that refresher. I also feel like it's a sense of, here's some things, pretty active things we can do. Refreshers on reactions to those types of emergencies. And also on Friday, we started using the Global Best Practices self-assessment tool to identify some areas where we can improve in teaching and learning. And so we continued with that on Friday as well.
Any questions?
Do we have an AED device, I assume?
We have 3 in the district. One at Lisa, one in the high school gym, and then one pretty close to the hallway between the middle school and the high school. We talked about, we wouldn't mind maybe 1 or 2 more, maybe one on the second floor of the high school and one directly in the middle school, but yeah, we have 3.
There's also, I believe, one in the ASA lobby area just outside the gym.
Yeah, so 2 at the middle school, high school.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Any other questions? No. I think, Keith, if it's okay, we'll go ahead and do the course approvals for Reg, because he has to leave in the next 5 minutes, and then we'll get you in. So you all received a proposal for 6 new courses. Am I right, or is it 7? 6, yeah. For 6 new courses, and these typically come before the board for approval. So these are proposed course offerings for next year, and I believe we already had them previewed once, but we now have full syllabi. So I will make a motion to approve these new course offerings for next year. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion on any of these?
I just have one question. For the two, the writing course and the Asian Lit course, are those, they sound great. Is anything being dropped as a result of adding these, or are they just additions?
These are additions, but it might result in another course or two being dropped. It's a full plate.
Right.
So adding one or two might be, so it depends on enrollment.
Okay, so what ends up getting dropped will be dependent on enrollment and decided, are you the one that makes that decision, or department head?
With the, last year was with the guidance counselors, and the department has this year, so it might be with department heads as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There was a conversation at a curriculum meeting, I forget, one or two back, about how a healthy curriculum is dynamic and has new courses in, and if that shows old courses out, that's a healthy thing. So I think that was the thought context for that.
I think what I would like to avoid is something that's heavily enrolled being dropped for something that would be much more lightly enrolled, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, we would look at some, enrollment drops, and, well, we wouldn't eliminate a heavily enrolled course and make room for others.
Right.
One that enrollment drops.
Okay.
3 or 4.
Right. Okay. Great, thanks.
I was wondering if any of these courses are dependent upon the half-time STEM teacher being hired in the next budget cycle.
The robotics and the Python are dependent, but I would work to try to make those happen regardless. But so in the ideal world, those would be taught by a new teacher. But if that,
I mean, I guess maybe.
that's the hope.
Maybe it's worth clarifying, we're approving offering these courses, we're not necessarily approving that you have to staff these courses, so. So for the board, we're not, yeah. These are courses to be added to the course catalog, in other words, not necessarily firm commitments to how often or when they're offered. These look like fun, I wish I could take about 4 of them.
Yeah, I think they all look good. We got some good feedback from the curriculum committee meeting, and pretty excited to be along.
Any other conversation or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thanks. Good luck to the hockey team. Okay, Heath, thanks.
Okay, as you can see, there's a lot going on at the middle school. I won't read down through each one of these, but I did want to elaborate on some of them. First, I want to talk about the students of the month. These students, it says December, but this is actually the past month. So we have 6th grade Pippa, Jackson Sanborn, 7th grade Hannah Manch, and 8th grade Emerson Boston. Basketball, cheerleading, and chess teams have finished up their seasons. As you can see, they did very well. I'm very proud of our cheerleaders. This was the first team in 3 years, and they participated in 2 different competitions. That's not on here, but I did want to acknowledge them. We have a math counts team that is just our 8th graders. They have done phenomenally well. It was probably about a month back, a little bit after, we had 4 8th grade students that went to Reedsburg Middle School and participated in the math counts competition. There was about 10 other middle schools there. We placed second out of the 10 teams, which was very, very impressive. It's the highest we finished in a long time. Not only that, but 8th grade student Tommy Owen had the highest score. They take an individual assessment throughout the day, but he had the highest score out of all students. And then at the end of the math counts competition, they have what they call a speed round, and Tommy ended up winning that. So congratulations to Tommy. And to piggyback off of that, so they won for the 2nd place for regional. They qualified for the states this past weekend. They went on to the states competition, and they placed 6th place out of about 32, 33 teams. On an individual note, Tommy had the 4th highest score, meaning he will be participating on the state team for students from the state of Maine. So an all-expense paid trip to Washington, D.C., representing Maine. Tommy Owen will be representing Oregon. Very cool. says our OMS math team placed first in the February 1st competition. That was the second of 3 competitions. We have probably about 30 plus students that participate. This, if you've never seen it, it's a large group of students in the gymnasium. It's our students taking a math assessment. We compete against several other surrounding schools. Last time we placed second, and this time around we placed first. What really stood out was our 6th grade students. They had a 20-point jump last competition. We were second to Reedsbrook. This time around, our 6th grade students scored 20 points higher. That's not the best way to see growth, but it's pretty impressive to see that we grew that much. So very proud of them there. We had our county spelling bee just recently. Javi, Alicia Santiago, and Athena Saucier were our top 2. They both placed 7th in, the state bee. We placed 2nd as a school in our regional spelling bee. And then, of course, just to reiterate, our show choir teams were amazing, both the A and B teams. And it just goes on, and I'm sure I probably forgot something. So very impressive for our middle school students. Just today, Susan Smith, maybe some of you know her from the University of Maine, was at Orono Middle School doing something with what we call our Advanced Art Workshop. This is a group of students that are either identified as 504 students or they're in what we call our talent pool. Talent pool is a group of students that are identified for that 504 grouping. And not 504, 104, chapter 104. And Susan is amazing. This is the second time she's been out. First time around, she did something that the kids really enjoyed. I was the model in that, so that was a natural fit for me. This time around, I didn't get to model, but if you see and you read that, they're going to be participating in a, a large event that the university is putting on with, she said, Susan, about 300-400 different female students from around the state. So they were very excited about that when I talked to them today. As far as curriculum goes, just recently we kind of solidified our testing dates. Our MEAs will be the start of April, and we've also put down when we'd like to do our NWEAs. So I'm currently in the process of creating a schedule for those. We've been very busy as far as our professional development goes. This past Friday was a lot of fun. You can see we did 3 different things. Response to intervention, we've been spending a lot of time with that. Danielle Pelletier and Jill Conley spent about an hour and a half talking about Tier 1 interventions. Entire school, we're going to spend a little bit of time with Tier 2 and Tier 3 in upcoming months. After visiting a lot of classrooms, for one, again, I see this all the time, we have some amazing teachers, but I thought it might be best to spend a little bit of time talking about learning targets and essential questions. Went very well. I personally did a professional development session on that. The teachers wanted to piggyback off that and have some more time actually working together, collaborating with one another, and working on learning targets and essential questions. And then finally, whenever we get a chance, I encourage teachers to share any best practices that they're currently doing in their room. Great teachers, and they do some great things. Just to have the opportunity to share with each other what they're doing. We do that as often as we can. And then finally, in the upcoming months, we're going to be 2 of our teachers, Chris Gray and Deb Soderberg, along with Justin Archer. Justin go to the workshop, but the other 2 did. Are going to be doing a professional development, either 1 or 2, they're not sure, on working with high-functioning autistic students in the classroom. And you'll notice, and to finish off under student data updates, IXL, I put this in the last report, and I wanted to put it on this again because I wanted to talk about it. This is, last year, we as a middle school, I learned that we had Math IXL. This year we have ELA included. So this is if you forgot, a program that supports what the teachers are doing in the classroom. And it's a software program that works with students at where they're at and meets their individual This is not a classroom instruction. You will never walk into a classroom and you'll see all the computers on it, and that's what the teacher did for the assignment throughout the day. Some teachers do this as a means of preparing for Algebra 1 if you're in 7th grade. Some of you might have seen the checklist that they have to go through to help prepare them. Some, not often, put this as a homework assignment, but a lot of teachers assign it for students to do on the side. So a lot of this is not mandatory. So with saying that, can you look at the number of hours our students have spent on this for something that's not mandatory? We kind of played with it the start of the school year where we kind of made it mandatory and we didn't want to force this upon them, so we pulled back on that. But to see that, you know, our 6th grade, yes, the 6th grade is large, but to have over 1,000 hours spent on something that we don't really mandate, and to see the number of skills that they're mastering, it's pretty impressive. So, curious to see what this means at the end of the school year. If we see that growth, and that's what we're all waiting.
Great. Any questions? I had one. The IXL, I mean, you touched on this a little bit, but what's your perception about when students are most often getting time on IXL? Is it side projects in a class, or is it, I don't think you have study periods at the middle school, but when do you think, or is it at home? When do you see students most often getting time on it?
It's changed. Well, I can say there is one 6th grade class for a third of the year has something we call math lab, and they do this when they go to the lab and the teacher works with them, period. At the start of the school year, when you look, as you can see when they're doing it, where they're doing it, it would show you that they did most of it at home, because we had an incentive tied to it for the following day. Did it during school, recess. Children probably told you about it. So they did it, tried to get it done during school, and they had to do so many minutes, and again, we kind of backed off that because we felt that teachers, we didn't want to force math upon the students. It wasn't going over well, so again, we backed off of that. But now, if you look at the reports, it's being done at home. It's mostly being done at home, whereas before it was in school, because we were trying to get it done there. I was going to say something about it. They do, it is the other piece you had mentioned, kind of maybe a filler, but the nice thing about IXL is, as you know, we have students at all different levels, and some students finish their assignments a lot sooner than others, so rather than just sit there, the teacher would say, pull out a book, which they do, there's something that they can go to, and you'll never run out of work to do on IXL. So if it's not something assigned in class, students get done their work early, they can pull this out and work on it. But at this time, looking at the data, most of it's at home. Some more than others.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Darcy?
Fundraisers that are really important. In April, the community bag at Hannaford, $1 per sale of, make sure it's the community bag. But if you purchase that, $1 per bag goes to Ace Adams, and the Clean Recycling Challenge is still underway. On our in-service day last week, we spent our time analyzing the gaps within our health and science curriculum, and working towards making plans to fill those gaps. We had a really great professional discussion. I wish we had another whole day to maintain that. It was really a thoughtful discussion. We did start talking about social studies, but it's just do need more time for sure. Grades close Friday, and our progress reports will be going home on the 19th. We decided last year at about this time that MEA testing during the first week was a no-go. So we plan on starting the 28th this year. And then the WIAs will be in mid-May.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, but I just wanted to comment, I brought my Clink things to Hannaford. It was super easy, so if anybody's thinking that it might be hard, it's really very simple.
Bring your bags. Okay. One last thing, actually, Reg made me remember about the AED training. Officer Lesky actually organized for somebody from Orono Fire Department to come over and train our guidance team and emergency response team as well at ASA next, I think it's this Friday coming. So there'll be a number of us trained, which will then help encourage others to even become comfortable and an awareness of where that is huge.
Great. Okay, thank you. We'll move to superintendent report.
Sure, I have a couple of things. To begin with, I want to just let everyone know that we have been advertising for the next student representatives to the board. Ben and Becca's term finishes up this month, and we set a deadline of this Friday for applications and have sent out just another reminder to try to get some more applications in. So we'll be conducting those interviews and making those selections, and hopefully have people in place to begin at the March 27th, I think is our next board meeting, that board meeting. And I've asked Becca, and we'll mention to Ben, I'd like them to come at the beginning of the meeting, and we'll do kind of a passing of the torch and a recognition for them. So that's coming and in the works. And I also wanted to just share with you, I gave out tonight just a quick overview of the results of the facilities forum, the voting exercise. There's some extra copies on the side table if the people in the back didn't get it. And wanted to just share this with you. You know, I find that these are, there's some really interesting responses in these, and really not too much that's unexpected, I would say. One of the things, though, that I see in this is, you know, the perspective of that group is a different perspective than the perspective of the staff members, and they see the facilities and the needs from their own perspective, which is so important for us to gather. But it's going to look different when we put this up against all of the other feedback we have, and that's really the next step that we're going to work on as a facilities committee. PDT is going to get us the results of kind of all the other stakeholder inventories and interviews they did, so we can kind of look at the whole picture. But I would also, it's interesting, we had some half votes. Some people decided to see if their dots could go further, and they cut them in half and split them, so I decided to accurately reflect that on the count here. And I do think we have a couple of these that should be combined, like around the traffic flow and entrance and exit ways. I think around traffic and the right-of-ways, I think we could combine those two, so it would actually put that pedestrian and vehicle traffic flow up 4 more votes on this realm. You know, I think the things that we expected would be kind of at the top of the list are the ones that we see there. You know, the performing arts space, the athletic track field upgrades that are needed, the cafeteria issues at both schools, both in terms of size and the many uses that we have for those spaces and the challenges that come with that. And then traffic flow and safety around pedestrian and vehicular traffic. And then just outdated infrastructure and some upgrades needed. And then how to pay for all of this. Those are kind of, to me, the big top elements that bubbled up. So I don't know if you had any kind of thoughts or responses, or have done any thinking about things that you heard, or maybe anything that you wanted to bring up to the board tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo, we already said this thing, acknowledgements. I thought it was a really great turnout. We had about 100 people, and lots of enthusiasm, and certainly the primary goal was getting feedback, which is nicely summarized here, but also just building a little bit of awareness and enthusiasm in the community about the process we're going through. So I thought it was successful on that front too. And as you know, well, we recapped the schedule last week, so I won't do it again, but this is an ongoing process.
Yeah, I've heard lots of.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Becca, anything from the students?
All right. In terms of school culture, of course, congratulations to the show choir for qualifying for the state competition. Also, the cast of the one-act play will be performing their play, The Chronicles of Jane, tomorrow, March 7th, and I think this weekend as well. Good luck to all of our musicians who will be performing at the All Bands concert this Thursday, I think, unless there's a snowstorm. And also great job to all of the art students who have artwork displayed in the Bangor Mall. The freshmen and sophomores and juniors have submitted course signups for the following year. The varsity hockey team is playing right now for the Northern Maine Championship. And the OHS Unified basketball team played their last game today, and they finished a great season. Spring sports meetings are next week, so students will be signing up for those. And lastly, the Mr. OHS pageant is happening this Sunday, March 11th at 6 p.m. in the OMS gym. And this is a project graduation fundraiser, and it should be a lot of fun. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Okay, any questions or comments? No. Next up, we have discussion items. First one is budget. And I think, as usual, it might be productive to move to the back table in a workshop format.
Yeah, we do. Not in your packet.
Right, okay, that's what I. Right, yeah, yes.
additions to the budget and kind of begin to prioritize them in terms of, this is if we had 50,000 to spend on these, this is what we would choose first, and then if we had another 50,000, this is what we would choose next. So, the list you have before you, we took, we approached it with the first 50,000 we're calling Tier 1 priorities. So we created a prioritized list from top to bottom. So the OMS STEM, 0.5 is the top priority. And then it goes down the social work, hours, the grade 3 Chromebooks, et cetera. And I'll come back to these in just a second. I just want to
So within the tiers are also.
Yes, within the tiers, they're rank ordered. And then with tier 2, same thing, they're rank ordered. And so we've given you, a couple different ways to total that up. And then the things that are over to the right that are under the category of the lowest priority additions, those are the items that remain that kind of didn't make the top 2 tiers, that remain as these were additional items we put in the budget, but they didn't bubble up to be in those top 2 tiers. There were some slight adjustments we've made those. I just want to talk through a couple of details on this. With the social work in particular, one of the reasons that ranks so high for us, not only is it a need that we see among our students to have additional social work services, but we're able to access that through the regionalization initiative we're getting involved with this first year. We'll go on that later tonight. And because we're involved in that, we have $15,000 in our ED279 funding that would not be there if we weren't participating. So, the state has lots of different ways to spend this initiative, but for us, if we took those social work dollars out because we say our budget can't bear that, then we lose $15,000 in our ED279 because we have to participate in at least 2 initiatives. This is one of the 2 I think we'll participate in that costs something. The other one I think will be no cost. It'll just be a cost savings measure. We'll talk about that in the contract services discussion later. So that's why the social work hours rank so high for us. The grade 3 Chromebooks, to us, those are an absolute priority. The white MacBooks are at end of life. They cannot sustain, really become non-reliably further for some of the critical uses that we have around testing and instructional uses. But testing in particular, after this year, they will not be able to support the requirements.
WA is doing major updates for Power Me. The state did directly say that the MacBooks are EOL. Maybe EOL about 2 years ago.
In terms we eliminated $4,000 in sub-hours that we've had to have in our budget for at least a couple of years to be able to make things work. So it's taking out that half position, presumably if it doesn't make the cut for the higher priority tiers, we really have to add back in the sub-hours or it's just not workable. So you save 13,000 as you see, because that's the balance of what's left after we add back $4,000 or so. And then the last thing under tier 1, the OMS extracurricular supplies, that was a total line item increase of $1,850 in that line. $1,500 of that was what we really considered to be more of something that could be considered optional, and $350 was just kind of the difference in the uniforms we're having to replace this year. So it's the banners for $1,500 that we put on this is a lower priority addition, and that was $1,500, so that's why you see that divided up in that way.
What were the banners for?
Yeah, if you look, it's probably been about 5 or 6 years since there's any type of banner in the middle school gym where they're acknowledging sportsmanship for championships. So I wanted to focus on all the past sportsmanship we've received in the last 5 or 6 years.
This is a traveling banner system now. The
It is.
league did that to save money. It's a traveling banner. So you get to keep the banner the year you win. And then you have to
Same thing with the league championship.
So tier 1, we were able to get pretty close to the target that you set of $50,000. We weren't so exact. In tier 2, it was a little harder to do that. So the K2 iPad project, we had multiple options that we laid out as ways to accomplish beginning to have some technology for the K2 level that's in the classroom. This option that you have here is the lowest cost option. Frankly, it's the least desirable option, the second least desirable option. I think the least desirable option was Chromebooks for K2. They did not want Chromebooks for K2. So this one is a price tag of $13,500, which is almost $11,000 savings over what we had in the budget initially. So the difference is that in the one that was in the budget initially compared to this one, we've reduced from having one cart for every 2 classrooms at the K1 level to basically having one cart at a grade level. And teachers what I think they will want to do with that, instead of keeping them on a cart, they'll divide them up and have 6 per classroom and then trade around if they want to do a full class activity. I think in the model that we budgeted initially, they were going to do a similar thing, that they would have more in their classrooms and be able to trade around to have a full class set if needed. So they could have, everyone in their classroom paired up having a device in the first model, whereas in this model, it's much fewer per classroom if they divide them up, which is, I think, what they think they will do most often with the devices. So that's K1. K2, we've left that at it's really 10 per room is what the budget for this option is. So it allows them, one classroom can have a 1-to-1, and the other 2 could have 5 each. They can trade them around however they like based on the instructional plans, but it's 10 per room, and then every teacher has one. And then it's changing from a cart to more of a docking station that's a charging unit in the classroom. Teachers didn't really like the idea of a monstrous rolling cart on wheels, and so something more that you put up on a shelf that stores 10 iPads is what priced out. It's more cost effective. So again, I think Darcy and Sean could maybe echo my statement that this is probably the least desirable option. But I think this is probably the least we could go to still be able to eliminate the computer lab and give them enough so that they could create a schedule to continue to do some activities with a whole class, similar to the way they use the computer lab now, where it has to rotate.
Are there plans already for the computer lab space?
We're looking at more of a makerspace idea.
We haven't even talked to the teachers about this particular option. It's a little bit of a scale down from, slightly different than the last option 3 that we showed them. So it was really scaling back the K1 to, instead of having 6 per classroom as opposed to 10 per classroom.
We had talked to them about was 9, but maybe that was times less than 1 teacher.
Right. So that's the iPad project. The golf stipend, we feel like that program has worked through the established parameters we've set up to kind of get established and establish a track record and go through a year with someone doing it without a stipend, and they've shown some good interest and results with that, and we feel like the students deserve the opportunity to continue that program, so we'd like to add that stipend. The OMS teacher, we feel like the minimum that we can ask for with this is a 0.5 to be able to alleviate the overcrowding we have in what's going to be 7th grade classes next year, to add 3 sections to the master schedule to help with that particular grade level. And so that results in a savings you see over here. We had budgeted a full FTE. It doesn't allow us to accomplish the reduction in number of preps in all cases, but it gets us further down the road of working toward improving that. And then the last thing that we fit kind of into the next tier was the van. We feel like the van in 3 years does pay for itself in savings that we'll realize. And I think it would be a great resource for us to have for a number of uses, both staff going to trainings, transporting students, which staff put children in their cars all the time to transport them when they don't get picked up, they miss the bus, something happens. So from a liability perspective, we think it's a good decision. And then also to just help us when we renegotiate our bus contract to be able to begin to build maybe to having a couple of vans to offset some of the field trip needs of buses into these vans. Again, with one van, it does help, but most of the groups that travel with a field trip or like the initial program require 2 vehicles. So this would offset the need for one of those if they choose to take vans. And so that would help us realize the savings that we quoted to you. So over on the lower priority items, some additional clarifications there that I haven't mentioned. The OHS Special Ed Tech at the high school, Sharon has done some reconfiguring and says that she can work the needs through another mechanism. Not, the most desirable, but she says she can make it work. And she's also willing to try to figure out how to accomplish the workload with current staff, not adding back those hours that we've talked about were reduced in our office. And then the maintenance truck, while we feel like it's a need of the district and something that we should keep on our radar for future budget years, we feel like this isn't the year that we can add that to the budget. So I also added in, I didn't mention for the van and the truck, I wanted you to see the other costs we built into the budget aside from just the purchase, so you could see kind of the total, what we would either be spending, what we budgeted, or what we're eliminating if we eliminate. And you can see what those items total. And then we just created this category that I think we'll continue to think through around potential other cost savings that aren't new elements, or this one actually, this one isn't new. It was in last year's budget, that additional assessment. But it's the UTC assessment, something I think we will be able to take out. I really don't see our region being able to support additional assessment from the CTE Center. experiencing that same thing. So I don't think that UTC can expect that we would increase our assessment that dramatically in 1 year, especially if we're experiencing such a challenging budget year ourselves. So this is just the start of maybe where we can begin to list other possibilities that we come up with as we get further into the month of March, and hopefully some of our unknowns become knowns, and we know what the picture is shaping up to be, like the insurance, tuition, the other elements that there's a lot of variability still.
I mean, just kind of put this in the context, like Meredith just said, we'll meet again at the end of March, begin in the middle, and we'll hopefully start to know some of these things. Hopefully some of them insurance or changes to the 279 or tuition in our favor. All right, so that'll be some, that could help the picture. Otherwise, just kind of recap where we're at. I just did a quick in my head, if we take tier 1 and tier 2 and drop everything that's in the lowest priority category, that takes us down to about 580. Looking at this increase line, down to about 580,000. No, sorry, 680,000. And if you keep the principle of we're not protecting people from increased property valuation, that's another 150,000. So that takes us down to about 530, which is about $250 million. So still a very high number, but smaller than it was. And I just did a quick calculation. These were the two numbers we said we identified as the mill rate increase, and then looking at the green line, the grand total. Looking at just the I'm trying to remember, I did the calculation, but I could try that right. Percentage increase dropped to about 3.9% from 5%. So again, that's if we keep tier 1 and tier 2. So I'm not really recommending we try and make any more. I think we should discuss if we agree with the prioritization tonight, but I'm not really recommending trying to push further or make cuts or make any decisions like that. I think we should wait till the end of March when things start to firm up. And if we're lucky, we're done at that point. If we're not lucky, we start to have a harder conversation about other things that have to go in the box for savings. But that's my recommendation. We're not really go down that road tonight because so much is still up in the air. And we just kind of give the admin team feedback on the prioritization exercise that they did, which took some time and energy to do. It's never a fun thing to have to start doing this. But is there any feedback, agreement or disagreement people have for the priorities that were put out?
Okay, I would agree with the proposal you just put on the table. I applaud the work in this, and this is exactly myself, is what I was looking for. I also would like to agree with Meredith that looking at putting other things in this other possibilities box is a good idea. There's not much
lot, like, K2 kind of is a lot more kind of user-friendly towards that early elementary for the Apple platform. The Chromebooks, like I said, it's kind of at the lower, for a lot of the things that kind of, they're coming along, especially with Android kind of implementation with that. That's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But a lot of the Apple piece, like, it's been so ingrained in our culture. It's been, Milty's been around for 15 years. They, as far as the educational landscape right now, Apple kind of has that stranglehold because they have a lot of enhancing apps, especially with the iWorks, the iWorks, the iApps, and all the other pieces. And iOS has over 1 million apps that a lot of our teachers are using. Pretty common across the state, like collaboratively. If we were ever to look to do some with other districts, at that K2 level, the iPads are pretty dominant. And then we start getting kind of grades 3 through 5, and we start to see a shift towards Chromebooks. And then when we get to like grade 6, 12, that's where really it's predominantly MacBook Airs, probably 9% of the state, and the other 10% iPads at the secondary middle level.
But I think the grade 3 Chromebook project will be a nice trial for us to really see how we feel that might work as we begin to need to replace some of the other devices.
Sean, is there any concern about, maybe I say this because I'm getting, going back and forth between platforms? I'm probably not giving kids enough credit.
I think it's beneficial because, like I said, a lot of our students are going to quickly jump on whatever. Like I said, a lot of the kind of big pieces, the cultural shift is going to be on our teacher end. It's like if we ever decide to go Chrome or Windows, wherever we go, the big piece is going to be that PD and really training our teacher versus kids. You can give them something new, and like within like 20 minutes, they're like, "Yep, we're done with this. We've gone through this whole piece." And like I said, I think it's beneficial to really expose our students to a very wide platform of platforms. Because, like I said, in the work world, it is still predominantly Windows, and 90% of our workforce is using Windows. And having that Chrome piece, especially with Android coming in, is going to be interesting to see where. Like I said, Alphabet is the major company. Google pretty much owns everything. YouTube, Google, they own Boston Robotics. They're buying out Boston Robotics, and so it'll be interesting to see where a lot of this goes. But like I said, the Chromebooks is
too. This team, the third grade team, is really interested and motivated to try it out. So it helps that they're on board with it.
And like I said, especially with the Chrome, it's a lot easier to implement a Chromebook because we can just on the back end. I don't even have to really touch them. Give them white glove treatment. Can sit in my little office up and they can be out within 20 minutes. And so there's a lot more management we can do too, because since we are a G Suite school, even on the Apple machine, it's pretty predominantly Chrome. Like I ran through analytics, and 96% of our students are using Chrome as their primary browser. And about 98% of our staff, and we're one of the only ones that doesn't. That's story for another day.
My kids jump out on that at school. They're using all the Apple applications and stuff. But at home, we're primarily still Windows-based.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's just a nice thing to have the widespread diversity of platforms because.
And I buy the diversity argument. I totally buy the cost for teacher switch. Just wearing a long-term financial hat. You know, if you think about a day when LTI is no longer funding us, which I don't think is. That's something we should start talking about because that's where the state seems to be heading on education funding. And if that happens, Windows is a heck of a lot cheaper than Apple.
Right on.
And it's, as you say, it's got a more of a career track.
And like I said, the iPads too, really, like with the latest iOS, has gotten a lot more towards, like this here, so the Microsoft keyboard is essentially just like MacBook Air. And even MacBook Airs, like at WWDC in June, they are going to unroll a cheaper MacBook Air. The rumors right now is about $599 for the 11-inch. And
Apple's always going to be more expensive than Windows, vertical integration.
on the flip side, Apple products do last a lot longer. Like those white MacBooks, we did get 9 years out of them versus the Chromebooks, and these other ones are 3 years, 4 years. And the long-term savings versus initial upfront investment is always the fun. In education, unfortunately, money in education in an ideal world should not be together, but it is a global landscape.
And just to clarify, both the Chromebook cost and the iPad cost, that's a 3-year financing option for both of those. So
those are 3-year.
3-year commitments.
And with this, it would also put us in what's called a automatic refresh. We could either refresh up to the newest devices, or we could buy them all out for $1. Wish Milty was like that, but with Blaze Milty, that's
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. So this that line item is for the next 3 years, we pay that.
yeah, because that Chromebook there, which they'll probably come out with a newer model, we're anticipating to be about 175 per device, and if we lease 60 of them, we're anticipating, like I said, it's hard to know what the exact new models are gonna be this year. Well, I've got an idea, but like Michelle said, that machine there, I've dropped it from 8 feet.
Yeah, and then we have to buy the, what's the module that you have to buy with that?
I think I think I have a proposal, it's gonna save a lot of money on that
The
too.
license that you.
Yeah, the Chrome management
Yeah,
license.
that license and then the case.
That's in addition.
No, the Chrome management license and it's all rolled in there. Yeah, we tried to bundle that together to make it as simple as quick as point to the possible.
And grade 3 didn't require.
Yeah, grade 3 already has the store, so we're just swapping out chargers. And like I said, with that model, it'll be interesting because you have a lot more ports on that first. That's only got, the student model only has 2 USB ports on the Airbooks first. That's got an HDMI, USB-C, got a couple USB ports. It's, like I said, it's touchscreen if you really want to touch it. But
I mean, the only thing I would say is I would hate to see us starting to invest and commit down one road, Apple, Tiger, Chrome, before we have a serious conversation about it, but it doesn't seem longer term.
I think at next budget year,
That's a conversation, if and when the multi-ed program goes away, that's a conversation I think in this day and age, it's hard to imagine running schools without computers for students, but I think we're going to cover the whole cost, and I think it's a conversation about most cost-effective way to do that, but we're not there yet, and it doesn't seem to me like we're moving along to one particular direction, so.
So if we get rid of if we have to get rid of everything here too, how does golf look? Golf? Like if we get rid of that golf stuff?
So, yeah, the person doing that this year has done it as a volunteer. Oh, we paid them the kind of a small, yeah, it was a very small, yes. Stipend, it wasn't on the point system, so we could see if we could find someone to continue that. I think, that's not something that I think we should get in the practice of doing. If we set up a process and support people to get started, I think we should try to follow through with.
Right, I agree, and I understand the relationship we have with Old Town and hockey, but I almost have a hard time saying we're going to spend $4,600 on hockey, but
Well, it's hard to put those ahead of K2 iPads.
Oh, absolutely.
Different reason.
I know I always think about the Greenwich. It seems like it just seems to me like we have a lot of extracurricular things, which I know is one of the things that sort of brightens our world. But like how much there is sort of a pinch on the money stuff. Seems like we have a lot of extra things. We got some core things, and it seems like we're always like we're adding.
Their feedback for now, mostly, some of this will have at the March meeting, some of this will have the first April meeting. Have a full picture.
when do we have one?
We're expecting near the end of March, like a ceiling number, and then beginning of April will be our real number.
Tuitions are kind of the same thing, the day after. So really, I think it's the first of April before we're going to start to confirm. And one of the 79 one way or the other, hopefully by then too. But they're often like March releases.
Is there anything that would be useful to prepare to bring to you at the March 27th meeting, or maybe just see what develops and bring you any new information at that time?
Obviously, if you could add a piece of this list, that would be helpful, but for me, it's to the point where we really can't make any decisions. I think you've gone as far as you can with these tier rankings. So we asked for you guys to put the work in and did that, and now it's just a matter of waiting for more firm information to come in and going from there.
line item we do have a lot of control over is the balance forward, line 12. And that ties to balances. It might be a minimum, might be good to bring in just a history of our bank balance, you know, apples to apples, the particular bank balance. I can picture which page it's on in the audit, but I can't remember what page it is, but.
Are you talking about
our
unrestricted?
Unrestricted.
Or unassigned?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just, you know, a 3 or 4 year trend, what that bank balance numbers look like. And I know that always cringes every time I say this, but if we can start to get a picture of our, you know, how much money's going to be coming out of this year, good, but we are always positive by some amount, and we can give a sense start to that conversation. I think those go pretty strongly towards the balance board, which is one of the others we still have to think over. Additions or cutting cuts.
The balance, our current balance board won't help us in this budget, but futuristic, it'll be a 2-year.
Well, that's how we've always done it in this district. It goes back to Doug Smith, but that's not actually, for example, the 3% is, one assumes that carry forward is going to next year. Yeah, I mean.
We won't have these audited books and.
No, I know.
I mean, no, I'm saying we can give you a number, but it's not, we won't have that number in time to put it into this budget, it would be for future, is just what I was saying.
But I think the point is it gives a picture of our financial health leaving when you're going to
Right.
next and how comfortable are we, where's our comfort level with using the
Bigger number.
yeah, line 12, the balance forward.
Yeah, and obviously we're not, till the audit's done, we don't have an answer to the vet, and
Right.
honestly, till the audit's done, we probably don't have an answer, then there's 10,000. How to be able to start guessing to the next one. That number, I think, we need to look at. For, account this year, this next year, actually, maybe we're gonna come out of here and put in a couple $100,000 back in the account. I'm thinking to the last 3 years, that's a totally different story, so. That's a few $100,000, I think, start showing us things before we come out of here. Salaries, 30%, those are known, transportation contract is known, facilities, capital improvements are probably considered. Anyway, within 100,000, I hope the conversation.
I have one more question, I meant to ask at the last. So with the OMS teacher, I know last year we added sort of the ed tech to help with the overload. And so would that stay, and then we would add the teacher on because it's still too much?
So
Like this is addition?
Yeah, the ed tech was for special ed services.
Oh, okay, that were needed just because of the
Because of the big
Class
special,
needs.
yeah,
Okay.
and so that need is ongoing. This is class size really in regular education classrooms. So, we address part of the issue with adding the ed tech. Class sizes.
Keith, I don't know, you know, I've got a kid, well, I've got 2 kids in middle school, so you and I would master what the OMS schedule looks like, but is there some way to count periods where teachers and with the boards? I think everybody think the load at the middle school is usually high because of schedule, and that's the great schedule. But just give us a sense of the workload, what's kind of over and above the fact we have one big class coming in pictures. We used to have a number 6 for the middle school teacher until budget was 5 years ago, and it's the load on the teachers ever since, so we could maybe just bring some, the whole schedule's probably not even. Yeah, I'm sure it's not a coincidence.
I always wonder if I'm gonna make you like motion.
Yeah, now that you're here, you'll get better microphone.
Because sometimes I spin around really fast and then I'm like, oh, for Michelle.
It's just the podium that.
The podium was fine. It was just, yeah, but yeah, like I said, this was great.
Do you have someone sending you information?
No.
Yeah.
Megan's there.
They said it had to be done at 8:30.
Megan's there.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna pick up. She wants, she's like, yes, I got some. She said, oh, that's okay. Ella said she. Yes, that's fine.
So you could text her to get us some
I
updates.
could. I could do that right now. Sometimes she goes.
All right, so next up, I will make a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 405-6F, Public Records, in conjunction with, there's a motion, provision of public records related to terrorist acts, which is not defined quite as extreme as that sounds, but that's the way the law is written. So I would make a motion to go into executive session under that particular form of public record. Is there a second?
I will second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of executive session? All right.
Would you like that
Is this your
man to
last
come or just?
official meeting? Let's come to the next one for the handout.
Yeah.
nothing.
3-0.
Nice.
Let's see, it's probably
Probably at
in the
least.
third period.
Well, if Mike's right, and it ends at 8:30, then yeah, its third period is probably just, starting. Uh-oh.
Yeah, like I said, all that hot air.
All right, so we're out of executive session. Next up, we have staff nominations. So we have, make sure I got the complete list here. So we have 2 co-curricular nominations. So I would nominate the appointment of Alexandra Sayers for the one-act play tech director at OHS, and Tomo Ebahara for the JV baseball at OHS. Is there a second?
I will second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Next up is the Spruce Regional Center approval. Meredith or
Yep.
Jake?
So enclosed in your packet is a copy of the Part 2 application. The Part 1 application was submitted back in the fall and was accepted. We moved to Part 2. And you can see, and I've shared with you some of this information before, there are 3 different categories under this regionalization initiative, and you have to develop options for your regional initiative under at least 2 of those options, and participating schools have to participate in at least 2 different regional initiatives under at least 2 different categories. So what the Spruce Group has done is created a much wider menu of options to kind of meet the varying desires around regionalization and what different districts think would be beneficial. So you can see that, the category 1 is really solely focused on the social emotional needs. That's where the social worker shared service will be included, and also around just a lot of work around social and emotional needs of students in a variety of ways. And then category 2, you can see those are educational support. We may be interested in participating in particularly category 3, where we have some new requirements coming out around special education certification, and that might be beneficial to some of our future teachers, especially people who are support personnel if they're looking to become certified as special education teachers. This is really a route to help increase the applicant pool for special education vacancies, which is a critical need. And then in category 3, I think this is an area where I would see us participating at no cost, and that's around the regional purchasing. Things like our big paper purchase, our volume copy paper purchase, we're looking at doing a group bid on that, and other types of custodial supplies and athletic supplies, equipment. So that's what I was mentioning, the no-cost kind of way to get involved in a regional initiative that would actually be a cost savings measure. So they do put the social worker under category 3 as well, but it's really category 1 and 3, that whole social emotional needs of students kind of initiative in this. So we could participate under 1 for the social emotional needs, and then under 3 for purchasing to qualify for the regional fund. So at this point, it's required that the districts, you can see the districts listed who are a part of the collaborative right now. We have to vote to, as you see in the motion, to be a part of the Part 2 application. After the Part 2 application is submitted, then there will be something else that we bring to you in, I think, May, that would actually be a revision to the interlocal agreement that outlines all of this, and you would then approve that at that time for a final kind of, yes, we're still interested now that it's been approved. So you see the wording of the motion that was sent out to all districts to approve in this manner, and we have to provide the minutes to them later this month to submit with the Part 2 application.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make a motion, and then we can have a discussion. So I move that the board authorizes and approves the participation of RSU 26 in the Southern Penobscot Regional Program for Children with Exceptionalities, Part 2 application, to be approved as a school management and leadership center pursuant to 20A MRS Chapter 123, with the intent that upon the Commissioner of Education's approval of the Part 2 application, that the board shall vote to approve an interlocal agreement and cooperative agreement that are consistent with the interlocal agreement submitted with the Part 2 application. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now discussion. So I just wanted to clarify, we're basically looking at Category 1, number 1, Category 2, number 3, and Category 3, number 2?
Yes, and I don't know that we will do Category 2 right away. If we have someone interested in doing that, we might join up at that. I think that the more solid participation that I see us definitely being a part of would be the regional purchasing under Category 3, also the regional contracts under Category 3, and the social and emotional needs of students under Category 1.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have a couple questions. So do you have to have is there like a minimum amount of participation? Like you have to have one from so many categories?
Yes, you have to participate in 2 initiatives as a district, and it has to be in at least 2 different categories. And if you don't, what they say is they'll take away the money that was in your ED 279. So for us, that was the $15,000 I mentioned earlier.
And this like satisfies all the requirements for the regionalization? Like we don't have to, do we have to join another one also? Or is this like if we're part of the Spruce one, does that cover that?
For this year it does.
This is the only current regional initiative that's out there. There isn't, it's hard to tell what the future holds around this, but this is the current leadership in Augusta, their initiative around regionalization.
Anything else? Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor? Okay. Next up, we already did course offerings, so next up we have policies. As mentioned last time, we have 2 policies coming up. These are both second reads. So first up, we have ACAA-A, transgender non-conforming transgender and gender non-conforming student guidelines. This has not changed, I believe, since the board last saw it. This came out of the process of, well, there were specific concerns that arose as this policy has been implemented on the ground, and this was intending to address those. It was discussed pretty extensively with the principals and to a lesser degree with the guidance counselors. I did email all the guidance counselors asking for input. And so the main differences are recognizing the gender non-conforming part of the spectrum and changing some of the requirements of involvement of parents and putting best interests of the child as the primary directive on that.
And then the student activities outside the district.
And then we updated the student, right, section D7 was added to address the question of what happens at activities outside the district. And we tweaked D6 to make that a little more clear. about what that applied to. Yeah, so I will make a motion to approve the changed version of policy ACAA-A, transgender and gender nonconforming student guidelines. Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion?
So I like the policy, and I'm in favor of most of what's in the policy, but the only issue I take specifically is with D 4, 5, and 6, the restrooms, the locker rooms, and the other gender segregated facilities or activities. And I think I'd feel more comfortable if I knew that there wasn't the possibility of traditional gender conforming students feeling uncomfortable with non-gender conforming students being in those spaces. And what bothers me to some degree is at least in restrooms and locker rooms, we talk about a transgender or non-conforming student expressing a need for privacy. They'll be provided with reasonable alternative facilities, but we don't address a traditional conforming gender student who expresses the same need for privacy. We don't address that at all, and that's my only issue.
I mean, certainly, I think the concerns of all students are important. I think, as we've mentioned before, this is the current guidelines from the Maine Human Rights Commission. I would hope, as a matter of practice, if there were a gender-conforming student who had a privacy concern, that the staff would work with that student to find appropriate accommodations too. So I certainly don't. I see that. I mean, this policy is protecting the rights of the transgender, but I would hope and expect that the staff, and I have no reason to not think the staff would not accommodate that need of students as well.
I agree with you. I don't think that would happen in this district as far as a gender-conforming student who expresses interest. I don't think they'd be ignored or accommodations wouldn't be made. I just don't like the fact that it doesn't address it at all in the policy, but that's just my opinion.
Fair enough. Yep. Just historically, it hasn't been an issue, though. But again, every student's individual and should be respected.
And honestly, this may be my thing with the MacBooks and the Chromebooks. I'm getting old, so students may adapt to this stuff way better.
No, I think it's a good point, though. I mean, I think it's a point well made.
Yeah.
And Brian?
Yes, Michelle?
There's a few little typos. Do those need to be sorted out now, or?
We should sort them out now. Yep.
Okay. And then I had one clarifying question, and then I can help you with the typos. For sports teams or other things that have sort of a male and female or boy and girl team, how does that work for somebody who's transgender or gender nonconforming?
In the policy that's handed off to the Maine Principals Association Transgender Participation Policy,
okay.
which is but I believe that at all grade levels, that's based on playing with a team that conforms to gender identity. Does anybody know what the Maine Principals Policy says on that topic? Reg would be there.
I think it's exactly what you said, the consistently identified gender. I think that we are ahead of the curve on changing our policy around non-conforming gender identity or the gender fluidity, and I don't think the MPA has addressed that in their policy yet. So I think the MPA policy has been out for several years now, and there are students taking advantage of that opportunity to participate with their identified gender teams.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, typos. So, sorry, I had them.
This one's cleaned up, and the one she has is.
Oh, they might, those might have already been addressed.
We have a different version than you have.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Why don't you give us one or two just to make sure we caught the things you're seeing?
On page 3, item 3, expression has a T in it.
Or 3 might be different.
Looks like that's been cleaned up.
Okay. So on page 4, item 7, conforming is spelled incorrectly.
I think that's D7 she's talking about. It's on R3.
Oh, there's 2 7s. The second 7?
Yeah.
Maybe an 8 for you.
Yeah, it's fixed.
That's fixed.
Okay, it looks like that was fixed too.
Okay, I can stop.
All right, great. Any other questions, comments, proposed modifications? All those in favor of adopting the policy? Opposed? And next up is policy IKE. This is a required policy that we have not had on the books. That was somewhat under the advisement of MSMA in that the proficiency-based thing was changing so quickly that it wasn't, they thought we should wait for that to settle, but that has settled. And honestly, I don't think it ended up affecting us. This has been through policy committee twice. It's been discussed with all the principals. Principals are all happy with it. So it's basically has to do with what grade students are assigned to. And I think one of the key realizations is that at the high school they don't have grades, so that simplified quite a bit, and that took out the proficiency-based issues. And so really the rest of it is just the question of being held back a grade or skipping a grade in K through 8. And it's a bunch of criteria, and it's basically the principal's decision in the best interest of the child at the end of it. So I will make a motion to adopt policy IKE, promotion, retention, and acceleration of students as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
I'd just like to make a clarification that what's at the high school, I don't want people to think we don't have grade designations. We do. We just don't have credit requirements to matriculate from one grade to the next. We just have year 1, your freshman, year 2, your sophomore, but then the credits are what holds you up from graduation if you don't accomplish all the credits. So.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments, modifications? All those in favor of passage? Okay. Next up, subcommittee reports. Policy subcommittee will be meeting a week from Thursday. Yep, that's all I'm going to say on that. UTC?
We actually have a meeting maybe on Thursday, but I did actually write to Greg about the calendar, so we'll see.
And we were supposed to meet last week, but it got changed to this week on Thursday, so hopefully we'll meet, and if not, then we have a alternate date planned for the next week.
And Spruce?
Yeah, our next meeting is Thursday, the 22nd of this month.
Curriculum subcommittee?
Yeah, so we have a meeting this Thursday if it happens, and we're just going to look at a curriculum guide template that some groups are beginning to use a variation of this, and to just begin to talk about consensus for how that structure should look K-12 for the next step in the curriculum work. I know Shauna did some work with one with her group. Darcy's team is working on one with science. And so just to have a conversation to get some agreement on what are the key attributes we should be putting on those documents.
Can we get that sent out?
Yes.
And the facilities subcommittee, as all of you know, we met last week very successfully. We already talked about that. Next main steps, I think, are the facilities subcommittee is going to digest the total set of priorities a little bit and work towards a master priority list, as Meredith mentioned. Teachers view the priorities a little, not drastically differently actually, but a little bit differently. And so kind of trying to integrate priorities. And PDT now, between that last meeting and the enrollment report, is fully empowered to kind of go off and do their thing and come back with extensive documentation of needs and recommendations. So that will start to hit later in the spring. And any other business? Future agenda item requests? Public comment? Okay, the next meeting of the board will be March 27th, 2018, 6 p.m. here in the Orono Town Council chambers. Does the board have any requests for information or follow-up? All right, I would motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.